Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast, the podcast where two ladies play games, drink, mumble profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to the best time of the year. The most wonderful time of the year, if you will. And no, it's not Christmas. It is spooky season. Woo-hoo! Today marks the first day of our Spooktober episodes. Even though you are listening to this on September 30th, it's fine. It's a day early. We're just living our best life over here.
Oh, hell yeah.
So last week at the end of our episode, if you didn't listen, you should. We spun for, what is our topic for our first episode today, Em?
Local spooky legends. And I'm not sure if we've introduced ourselves yet. My brain's a little dusty with this here holiday approaching, but I am Emily, one of two hosts.
And I am Jen. I don't think we did. I think I got really excited about spooky episodes and just jumped right on in.
It's good. I feel like if people have made it this far, they probably know who we are, but I'll assume maybe not. Maybe not.
You never know. Someone new could be listening to this here episode.
Exciting.
But yes, we are covering local spooky legends, and when I say local, it's a loose term. Local to someone.
Yes. For ourselves, we grew up in Canada, which already isn't like a ridiculously historical place for like spookiness type thing and spooky legends. I feel like mostly it's if you're gonna go for spooky legends, it's a lot of the First Nations ones, which I've already covered, so we had to branch out a little bit.
Yes, but I think I can only speak for myself, but I know I've got a good tale to share with you today.
I am pleased with my own as well. I'm interested to see what you have to say about it. But I guess to start with, why don't you tell me a little bit about your week?
Oh man, this was a week to be remembered. I had so much fucking work to do this week because I'm about to go on to a new shoot. And it's just been insane. I have been trying to get everything ready before I go and do all my work, and it's been a lot. So I am here. My mind is mush, but I am here. What about your week, Em?
That is highly relatable. As per usual, I work basically all the time. We're kind of coming to what would be close to the end of our busy season. It'll stretch on for a little bit further yet. Usually goes until about November, but we're past the climax of the busyness. So at least we're there. And then beyond that, I've really been trying to work in some time to go see the corn maze before it gets trampled into 1,000,000 pieces. So those are my two big things in life right now.
Yes, I would also like to see the corn maze with you before it's trampled into 1,000,000 pieces. So here's hoping that by the time you guys listen to this episode, we've done that.
Oh yeah. So then for today, are you ready to spin our wheel of questions?
Spin away, Em.
Alright, so to start, what kind of potentially supernatural things did you believe when you were a kid?
I mean, I started watching the show Supernatural at a young age, so the possibilities were endless. My worst fear was Bloody Mary.
Fair
absolutely terrified me. Other than that, I don't know if I had any firm beliefs, but I was like, you know what? If it exists in Supernatural, it's possible.
Fair enough. I'm honestly trying to think, because I believed not necessarily in, things, but in, the idea that if they exist as a story, they're probably based on something. So for a long time, I believed that there was the possibility of maybe, vampires and werewolves, especially because people talked about them so much. But that quickly changed as soon as Twilight came out.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I mean, it was fun. I was a twihard as a child.
That's putting it loosely.
It was fun to be in the vampire werewolf conversation, but I feel like at that point I had discerned that they were probably fictional characters.
Yes, and that was for me too. Like, I remember being in elementary school and like me being genuinely concerned that if I was going to be in an old building at nighttime that there might be a like casual vampire hanging out in there. But then like Twilight happened and I was like, probably not. I feel like I have probably more valid concerns in other areas now.
Yeah, casual vampires are probably low on my list currently.
Very low. So then on that note, let's spin for our next question. So, what scary stories did you grow up with? Because I know kids will either share scary stories amongst themselves. Sometimes, like, parents will tell, like, a couple to get you to, like, not do something. So, like, is there a particular one that you grew up with?
I'm trying to think. Again, Bloody Mary was a genuine concern I had as a child because I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before. I might have.
I think you have for when we were sharing our own spooky experiences.
Yeah. I was at a sleepover and one of the cousins of the girl whose sleepover it was really trying to convince me that she was real, and I was thoroughly spooked, and my mom had to be like, it's not real, and she did like the whole like Bloody Mary thing in the mirror, and I still did not believe her that it was fake, and I'm like, now you've summoned her, we're fucked.
We're gonna be fucked, and it's all your fault.
Literally. I'm like, wow, Mom, you've cursed the household. Congratulations. I'll never forgive you.
Literally. I feel like, so for me, because so Jenny and I both grew up very Roman Catholic, but I feel like as far as like storytelling goes, Jenny was a little more exposed to certain things than I was.
100%.
Yeah, but for me, I only ever heard scary stories from, like, other kids. Like, my parents just straight up were like, nah, none of this bullshit exists. You keep that out of your head, wee, small, innocent child. And I was just like, okay. But, I remember there being this one where, like, I was told it, and it made me feel, like, really, really off about, well, there was a couple of them, actually. A couple of them really got me, but I'll share the one with you that stuck with me, because this really was a, like, turning point in my life for, like, needing to, like, have locked doors and stuff. But it's, like, literally one of those, like, kid urban stories where it's, like, there's this, like, girl who's, like, in her house at night, and, like, she is, like, house sitting for, like, another couple, and they have a dog. And so she goes to let the dog outside before bed to go pee, and then she goes to bed, and she can feel like the dog is like under her bed, like licking her hand. She's like, oh, okay, you know, whatever, this is fine. And she can hear like little droplets of water coming out of the shower head in the bathroom while she's sleeping. And then eventually, at some point in the night, she feels like really weird about sleeping in there. So she's like, oh, okay, you know, it's probably fine, like as long as like the dog is here with me. And so she reaches her hand under the bed, and the dog licks her hand again, and she's like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. And then a little later on, still feeling really weird about everything, she's like, oh, okay, like, I gotta go to the bathroom, but I'll check to make sure the dog's still under the bed first. So she does. The dog licks her hand again. She's like, cool. But then she goes to the bathroom, and she opens up the door, and the dog is hung from the ceiling with blood dripping out of its mouth, and those are the droplet sounds she was hearing. And, like, written on the mirror in blood is, like, humans can lick too, or something weird. and, as a kid, I was shooken. I was like, I will never not lock my doors ever again.
I remember reading that exact same story because it was forwarded to me on an email chain back in the day. And it was like, if you do not forward this to 30 more people within 10 seconds... they're coming for you next. And I'm like, oh my god, who do I know? Who can I send this to?
Okay, that is such a throwback because I remember getting those emails, but for me, it was like, I remember getting one about a ghost girl at one point, and Mom was like, you don't need this is junk email, and she like deleted it before I could read it. But there was this one that I would always get where it's like, forward the mouse to 10 people for good luck, and it was like a mouse dressed as a gangster dancing by like a piece of cheese, and I was like, I gotta forward him to 10 people, otherwise I'm not gonna be blessed. I'm gonna have no luck.
Oh man. The internet on like 2008, 2009 was wild.
Even earlier than that, I think that was. But yeah, a different time for sure. But yes, we should spin for our next question.
Yes, spin away.
Excuse the alarm. The motorcycle dealership beside me is once again having problems with their security. It just started up again, in case anybody can hear it. But our question is, do you like hearing scary stories?
Yes, I love hearing scary stories. I think it's so much fun. To do a small plug, we just put up a Google forum on our Instagram. You can find it in our like little bio, where you can share your scary stories with us for our Halloween special. So you should do that because we love to hear scary stories.
Yes, and so my answer is the same as yours. I love hearing other people's scary stories. It like for me, it's like, it's just innocent enough where it's like you're not like experiencing the spooky thing yourself. But I love hearing about what other people experience because it's always like, it's different when you know the person and that like they're telling you something that they themselves have experienced. It just adds like a little je ne sais quoi to the story.
Yeah, there's just something real good about it, and like people react in such different ways too that it's always very interesting to see how people react to situations that are like terrifying, because you wouldn't know unless you're put in that situation how you would react.
Oh, for sure. And like I think one of my other favorite things too is like, I love sharing scary stories even like from my own self, because sometimes you'll come across a person who doesn't really talk about this kind of stuff, and you'll tell them and be like, oh my gosh, like I had this super creepy experience the other day, and you'll tell them, and then they'll look at you and they'll be like, I had that same experience, and they'll tell you about something that happened to them like however many years ago or something that they never told anybody else.
Yeah, and it just comes from like right out of left field, and it's always very intriguing.
Like I said, it feeds me. I love it.
Well, guys, make sure you go fill out the Google forum and tell us your scary stories, because we really want to hear them.
Yes. All right, let's spin for our last question. So, is there anything you wouldn't do today because of a scary story?
I think if anyone who has been listening long enough heard our Halloween episode from 2020 when we told our own ghost stories, they would remember a time when I was babysitting and I had a very spooky experience. I feel like the thing that I learned from my own story and experience is I should listen to my gut, and if people tell you don't go in the basement under any circumstances and there's boarded up doors, maybe you don't take that job. Maybe you just pass on that one.
Yeah, that's fair. I honestly think there's a lot of things that I wouldn't do because of scary stories, like depending on what it was. Like I would never sleep in my car in the middle of the woods where you're in an unfamiliar area. Like there's just, like there's a bunch of things where like you hear something and you're like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe like the one I just shared with you. Don't leave your doors unlocked. Don't take creepy babysitting jobs.
Weirdly, your story from, I think, last week about the Appalachian Mountains where the couple is, like, camping, that one has stuck with me, and I'm, like, genuinely, like, I've been thinking about it a lot, about how I have no idea what I would even do in that situation, but what I took away from it was don't go on hikes.
Yeah. Like, for sure. And, yeah, it's one of those things, too, where, like I said, you'll hear these stories and like it won't necessarily be something that was on your radar, but then you think about like what the possibilities are of having something like that happen, and then you're like, wow, like that could be a real thing that could happen. Somebody could be following me while I'm on a hike and I would never know.
And I hate that thought. So.
Oh yeah, it's a fabulous in a very terrible way. But that concludes our Wheel of Questions round. So, what happens next is I'm going to give a description for my story since I'm going to be going first today. I will probably be providing descriptions throughout the rest of Spooktober as well, just in general. But this particular description...
Sure will.
Yeah, but this particular description has more to do with my story, so it's a good thing I'm going first today.
All right, well, take her away, Em.
Yes. Well, to start, do you have any guesses on what mine is? I don't think you will, but you might. I'm curious.
I really don't. I can't even think. I feel like there's so many possibilities and so many different local legends that you could talk about that I genuinely have no idea. I'm going in completely blind.
Okay. Just remember that. So.
Oh, God.
Here's my description. Bloody Mary is a legend of a ghost, phantom, or spirit conjured to reveal the future. She's said to appear in a mirror when her name is chanted repeatedly. The Bloody Mary apparition may be benign or malevolent, depending on historic variations of the legend. Bloody Mary appearances are mostly witnessed in group participation play or by a man who's about to die.
I should have known.
I played a trick on you today. I knew for a fact when I asked these questions that you were going to come back to me at some point and mention Bloody Mary. I freaking knew it. I should
have known when you said, did you believe in any legends as a kid? I should have known. God damn it.
Gotcha, bitch. All right, I'm excited actually because I don't know why I've never covered this, but I just know that we've talked about it before. And then I was thinking about what would be a local spooky legend that people probably grew up with. And this is one of them.
All right. Well, tell me about Miss Mary herself.
Yes, our favorite lady. So, here is my story. Historically, the divination ritual encouraged young women to walk up a flight of stairs backwards, holding a candle and a hand mirror in a darkened house. As they gazed into the mirror, they were supposed to be able to catch a view of their future husband's face. There was, however, a chance that they would see a skull or the face of the Grim Reaper, instead indicating that they were going to die before they would have a chance to marry. In the ritual of today, Bloody Mary allegedly appears to individuals or groups who ritualistically invoke her name in an act of something called catopromancy. This is done by repeatedly chanting her name into a mirror placed in a dimly lit or candlelit room, and the name must be uttered 13 times, or some other specified amount of times, as we know. I can feel you staring at me through the camera. This is also feeding me. This is good sustenance.
Oh, God.
I love this. So, the Bloody Mary apparition allegedly appears as a corpse, witch, or ghost that can be friendly or evil, and is sometimes seen covered in blood, hence the name, and the lore surrounding the ritual states that participants may endure the apparition screaming at them, cursing them, strangling them, stealing their soul, drinking their blood, or scratching their eyes out. You know, so super casual. Some
very casual.
Super cash. Some variations of the ritual call Bloody Mary by a different name, which is Hail Mary and Mary Worth, and are popular examples. Those are the popular examples. The modern legend of Hanako-san in Japan strongly parallels the Bloody Mary mythology. So, staring into a mirror in a dimly lit room for a prolonged period of time can cause one to hallucinate. Facial features may appear to melt, distort, disappear, and rotate, while other hallucinatory elements, such as animals or strange faces, may appear in the mirror as well. So, that's like yourself. Like if you are in a dimly lit room, stare into a mirror for too long and don't look at anything else, your eyes will start to play tricks on you, and that's an actual, scientific fact.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
Oh, okay. I have a little fun science blurb behind this because I hyper focused on it and really studied it at one point because I was curious. So, you've heard nothing about that at all?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so basically, they did a study a while ago to figure out why it is that sometimes when people look in the mirror, it seems to trigger hallucinations, especially in people who suffer with different mental disorders that kind of cause that already. So they were like, what is it about mirrors that causes this as a trigger? And it turns out that when you're staring into a mirror and you're only looking at one object, such as your face, for example, and you're not doing anything else, what happens is that your eyes are constantly relaying information back into your brain on what you're looking at. And eventually, if you're not looking at anything else, what happens is that there's something to do with the ocular part of your brain where it doesn't like stagnant information. It has to be constantly getting a different feed of information into the brain. So then your eyes don't understand the concept of looking at something and having nothing change. Because normally, if you're out in nature, you're seeing like the wind, you're seeing a bunch of different things moving all the time. Like it's not uncommon. But if you're looking in a mirror in a stagnant environment, there's probably not a lot of movement happening. So then your brain starts to play tricks on you, and your eyes will start to think that they see things that aren't really there, because your brain cannot accept the fact that something could not be happening or not be changing or that you couldn't see something. So then people will still stare into their own faces and they will see things happen to their own faces, which is terrifying. But it's literally their eyes getting bored, making up information and sending it back into the brain on things that aren't actually happening.
That is fascinating. I kind of want to try it now.
It doesn't take long. So they said that for people who want to kind of like try this for themselves, it's literally the same thing. You go into a dimly lit room, so there's not a whole ton of light. You find one spot on your face in the mirror to stare at, and you just stare at it for like, the one I read said like usually people will start to notice things in about 5 minutes, but it can take a little less than that. I tried it for myself just to see if I could trigger anything. And for me, one of the things that got me is I thought at one point that it was a different person looking at me from the mirror because it looked like their eyes were moving when mine weren't.
Oh, weird.
I know. And then like eventually like you look somewhere else and you look back and everything's normal again.
Huh. I'm gonna have to try this and I'll let you know.
Right? So this is also one of the reasons why, just in relation to the story that I'm telling you, why some people think that this legend has been so persistent through the years. Because it's like, you do the chant, you do the ritual, you stare into the mirror, and all of a sudden something happens.
That's an intriguing theory. I like that one.
See? I know, I'm full of strange information sometimes, but that was my little tangent. Because like I said, I literally read it once and I was like, I have to know everything.
I love the way your brain works.
Thanks! You'd be the only one. Alright, let's move on. Giovanni Caputo of the University of Urbino writes that this phenomenon, which he calls the strange-faced illusion, is believed to be a consequence of a dissociative identity effect, which, as I said, is the trigger for lots of different types of mental illnesses. And it causes the brain's facial recognition system to misfire, like I told you, in a currently unidentified way. Other possible explanations for the phenomenon include illusions attributed, or at least partially, to the perception effect of something called Troxler's fading, and possibly self-hypnosis, or a thing called apophenia.
Interesting.
Now you see why I obsessed about it. I read it and I was like, I have to know everything. So, back to Our Lady Mary. So, there is some debate on the identification of Bloody Mary and if she is based on a real woman as well. A number of historical figures have been put forward as candidates for Mary, including Mary I of England, daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, who had around 300 religious dissenters burned at the stake during her reign and was known later by the nickname Bloody Mary. And also there's Elizabeth Bathory, a 17th century Hungarian countess, who allegedly tortured and killed around 650 girls and women, bathed in their blood, and was accused of vampirism. And another option is Mary Worth.
Jesus.
I know. Have I never told you about Elizabeth Bathory?
You have not.
I gotta tell you that one at some point. It's super creepy.
I love it.
Because, yeah, no, that one's really fucked up. I won't get into it too much. But, she has a lot of, like, haunted, like, types of attractions in her memory. Because she's considered to be one of the most ruthless women to have ever existed.
You will definitely have to cover that in a future episode.
No. Crazy. So, and then lastly is Mary Worth, who has been identified as either a woman who killed slaves escaping the American South via the Underground Railroad, or a woman who was burned at the stake during the witch trials in the early modern period. Okay? So, that's the history of Bloody Mary, which, as we know, very interesting, worth the research.
Very spooky.
But because this is a spooky episode, I decided to share with you a person's story of Bloody Mary that they had experienced with. And this is from an anonymous account, so I don't have a tie back for who shared the story. But I thought it'd be a good cap on my little factual fun part for you. Are you ready?
All right, take it away.
So, as a young child, this is from the perspective of the anonymous person, by the way. So, they say that as a young child, I was basically the definition of a chicken shit. I used to sleep with my lights on or fall asleep to the sound of a movie blasting out of my television. And I guess all of that fear drained out of me during... Right? And I guess all that fear drained out of me during those years because at this point, I'm not exactly a person that you could call a coward, but obviously I do have my moments. So now to the story. When I was about 7 or 8, I started going to my elementary school summer recreation program. There I met some of the best people that I know. I met a girl there, we'll call her Rebecca, who to this day is still my best friend, and we all sat in a small corner of a large gymnasium while she told us about Bloody Mary, the lady in the mirror. She told us the basic story about Bloody Mary, which it was a woman who had lost her child, and if you chant her name while standing in front of a mirror in a dark room, she will appear, right? So, after her telling us about it, I continued to hear new stories about Bloody Mary from different people throughout the summer. Variations, backstories, and anything that like people could think about just to make it scarier. And being the young naive child that I was, I believed all of it. So at past midnight, at past midnight, I would lay awake in my pitch black room contemplating what I would do if Bloody Mary just happened to slip out of the mirror and into my room. And one night, I went to bed as usual and tried to sleep as it was the night before my 9th birthday. I kissed my mom and dad goodnight and then proceeded to go into my room and fall asleep with my lights on, as always, and then I slowly fell asleep. And then I woke up, and the room was pitch black. Mom had probably closed the light or something, and I looked at the LED alarm clock on my nightstand and it read about 11:59. And they say, great, I have to wait until 12:10 to go to the bathroom. Even if I did go to the bathroom, I would go in terrified, trying my best to avoid looking into the mirror. And so I sat there alone in the dark of my room with a full bladder. And then she says to herself, and she's like, you know what? This is ridiculous. You are now 9 years old and you are still acting like a 2-year-old. Bloody Mary isn't real. And so she says, I want to get over my fear.
Trying to hype myself up still?
Yeah. And so she's like, I want to get over this fear. I really did. And thinking that if I went to the bathroom and did the ritual, nothing would happen, maybe I wouldn't be scared anymore. Which, that's pretty valid, I think, anyways. So she says, I grabbed a large candle from my parents' room and tiptoed quietly so that I wouldn't wake them up. And so I crept down to the living room and grabbed the lighter from the kitchen. I lit the candle, burning myself on the first try. And then walked into the bathroom. I set the candle next to the sink and I stared into my lit reflection. Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary! As I would say it. And so, nothing happened. And I was relieved. I quickly blew out the candle and slipped back into my bed smiling. And so I just laid there staring at the clock waiting. And I closed my eyes. But then I realized it was nearly 90 degrees outside in the summer and my bedroom was freezing cold.
Oh no.
I was afraid to open my eyes, but I did. And in my doorway was a dark figure of a lady. Looking at her made my insides hurt, and I wanted to scream. But I was also afraid of waking up my parents, so I just simply closed my eyes and tried to imagine nice things like puppies, flowers, and the celebrations that would take place in the afternoon because it was my birthday. I drifted asleep, and with the feeling that Bloody Mary was probably still watching me. So in the morning, I woke up, and the sunshine from outside blinded my eyes. I looked in the doorway, Nothing. I went in the bathroom and dared to look in the mirror, and there was a cut next to my eyebrow.
No!
I changed into my dress for the day, noticing several small scratches on my stomach as well, but I ignored them. And then, after that day, I tried not to think about that night. I never told my friends about what happened and that everything that she'd said was real. I am not afraid of the dark. I play idiotic games with my friends, like something called The Three Kings or the Midnight Game. I don't know what either of those things are. But not Bloody Mary. Never Bloody Mary. And that's my story. But yeah, so I thought that one was a little bit spooky. So I thought I'd put that in there because obviously this is our Halloween episode and I wanted to make it extra special for you.
That was my genuine fear as a child, I will say. Like I said, my mom did the whole Bloody Mary thing in the mirror after I told her what it was. And she was like, see, nothing happened. And she's like, now I want you to do it. And I was like, absolutely not, Mom. You can die, but I ain't dying tonight.
Yep. I choose life every single time.
Like, I ain't fucking with that shit. So.
Right? But yeah, that is
Good
the
luck,
conclusion
Mom.
of my fancy little story for you. I'm curious to see what you have for me. It's not very often that you get to cover like little mysterious things like what I do. I'm excited.
Yes, I know. I do not often dabble in the world of urban legends, but today I'm going to tell you about the legend of the Hookman. The urban legend started in the 1950s and has many variations. But in those many variations, the basic story is the same. Our legend begins when a teenage couple drives down to Lover's Lane for a hot makeout session after a date. Ooh la la.
Ooh la la. My favorite kind.
In the midst of their kissing, they hear some disturbing news on the radio. The radio announcer reports that a crazed murderer has escaped from a nearby insane asylum, and the newscaster says everyone should be on the lookout for this crazy man who has a hook in place of his right hand. Suddenly, the couple hears a strange scratching sound coming from the outside of the car. The girl becomes frightened, but her date insists everything is fine and tries to continue making out. Typical boy.
They think with one head, and it's not the one on top.
Yeah, literally. Quite literally.
Facts. These are genuine facts, my friends.
The girl resists, and eventually the boy relents and drives her home. When they arrive back at the girl's house, she exits the car and begins screaming hysterically. When her date exits the car as well, he sees a bloody detached hook embedded in the roof of the car and realizes that the hookman would have scratched through to the interior of the car if they had stayed at Lover's Lane any longer.
Spooky.
So, unfortunately, this urban legend is loosely based on a few different serial killers.
Oh, shut up. Are you for real?
It's for real. Two of the most infamous serial killers the legend could be based on are the Zodiac Killer and the Son of Sam. But many believe it's actually more likely based on a serial killer known as the Phantom Killer.
The Phantom? The Phantom of the Opera?
Yeah, literally. So, the scariest part about the Phantom Killer, in my opinion, is they are still unidentified and have never been caught. So
awesome.
We know nothing about their personal life, so I have nothing to share for you there. However, they're most infamously known for the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. So I'm going to tell you about those.
Alright, I'm ready.
The Texarkana Moonlight Murders involve 4 violent attacks which occurred over 10 weeks from February to May 1946 in and around Texarkana. Texarkana is a city in eastern Texas with a twin city across the border in Arkansas. So let's go through each of those attacks. The first attack took place around 11:45 p.m. on February 22nd, 1946. A 25-year-old man named Jimmy Hollis and his girlfriend, 19-year-old Mary Jean Laurie, parked on a secluded road that was a well-known lover's lane in the area after seeing a movie together. So very classic setup here.
Oh, yeah.
About 10 minutes after they arrived, a man wearing a white cloth mask, which resembled a pillowcase with eye holes cut out, appeared at the driver's side door and was shining a flashlight into the window. Jimmy, who was in the driver's seat, told the masked man that he had the wrong person, to which the masked man responded, "I don't want to kill you, fellow, so do what I say." Both Jimmy and Mary Jean were ordered out the driver's side door, and the masked man ordered Jimmy to take off his goddamn breeches. After he complied, the man struck him in the head twice with a pistol. Mary Jean said the noise was so loud, she initially thought that Jimmy had been shot in the head, but it was just the sound of his skull fracturing.
Ugh, gross.
Thinking the assailant wanted to rob them, Mary Jean showed Jimmy's wallet to prove he had no money. Which, what an iconic move to do to your date. See, he's poor.
He's broke. Why else do you think I'm here? It's not for the money. Don't take it from him.
After which, she was struck with a blunt object. The assailant ordered her to stand, and when she did, he told her to run. Initially, she tried to flee toward a ditch, but the assailant ordered her to run up the road. Mary Jean spotted an old car parked off the road, but found it empty, and again was confronted by the attacker, who asked her why she was running. She said that he had told her to do so, and he called her a liar before knocking her down and sexually assaulting her with the barrel of his gun, which is horrifying.
Gross.
After the assault, Mary Jean fled on foot, running half a mile to a nearby house. She woke up the residents of the house and phoned the police. Meanwhile, Jimmy regained consciousness and alerted a passing motorist who also called the police. Within 30 minutes, Bowie County Sheriff W.H. Bill Presley and 3 other officers arrived at the scene of the attack, but the assailant had already left. Mary Jean was hospitalized overnight for a minor head wound. Jimmy was hospitalized for several days to recover from his skull fractures. Jimmy and Mary Jean gave conflicting reports of the attacker. Mary Jean claimed that she could see under the mask and that he was a light-skinned person of color, whereas Jimmy alternatively claimed that it was a tanned white man. And they both said that this person was around 30 years old and 6 feet tall. But Jimmy said that he was blinded by the flashlight initially, so he didn't really get a good look at them, and neither did Mary Jean. Law enforcement repeatedly challenged Mary Jean's account and believed that she and Jimmy knew the identity of their attacker and were covering for him, which he assaulted her with a gun, so I don't know how much I believe that she knew who it was and just decided, he should get off scot-free.
Right. Something fishy.
The next attack took place on March 23rd or 24th, 1946. 29-year-old Richard L. Griffin and his girlfriend of 6 weeks, 17-year-old Polly Ann Moore, were found dead in Richard's car the morning of Sunday, March 24th by a passing motorist. The motorist saw the car parked on a lover's lane and first thought the couple was sleeping in their car. Richard was found between the front seats on his knees with his head resting on his crossed hands and pockets turned inside out. Polly was found sprawled face down in the back seat, and both were found fully clothed, and both had been shot once in the back of the head. Richard had been shot twice in the car, whereas a blood-soaked patch of earth near the car suggested that Polly was moved into the back seat after being killed on a blanket outside the car. Congealed blood was found covering the running board and it had flowed through the bottom of the car door. A .32 caliber cartridge casing was found possibly ejected from a pistol wrapped in a blanket, and no official reports were made to suggest any sign of sexual assault to either of them, but a local rumor claimed that Polly had been sexually assaulted. However, modern reports refute that claim. Mary Jean, from the first attack, returned to Texarkana after these murders in the hopes of helping to link the case and identify the killer. But the Texas Rangers again questioned her story and still insisted that she knew who her attacker was. Which, I hate because she's here trying to help, and they're like, nah, we still don't believe you.
Right, and it's like, what else do they have to go off of?
So around 1:30 a.m. on April 14th, 1946, the third attack occurred. A 17-year-old man named Paul Martin picked up 15-year-old Betty Jo Booker from a musical performance at the VWF Club at West 4th and Oak Street. Paul's body was later found at around 6:30 a.m., lying on its side by the northern edge of North Park Road. Blood was found on the other side of the road by a fence. Paul had been shot 4 times through the nose, through the ribs from behind, in the right hand, and through the back of the neck. Betty Jo's body was found by a search party at 11:30 a.m., almost 2 miles away from Paul. Her body was behind a tree, fully clothed. She was found on her back, posed with the right hand in the pocket of the buttoned overcoat. Betty Jo had been shot twice, once through the chest and once in the face. The weapon used was the same as the first double murder that took place less than a month earlier. The authorities were not sure who was shot first. Sheriff Presley and Texas Ranger Captain Manuel Gonzalez said that examinations of the bodies indicated they both had put up a terrific struggle. Paul's friend Tom Albritton said that he did not believe an argument that had happened between the victims and that Paul had no known enemies. The next and final known attack, happened sometime before 9 p.m. on Friday, May 3rd, 1946. 37-year-old Virgil Starks and his 36-year-old wife, Katie Starks, were at home on their farm, which was right off the highway and about 10 miles from Texarkana. Virgil was sitting in an armchair reading the newspaper when he was shot twice in the back of the head from a closed double window. Hearing the sound of the broken glass, Katie came from another room and saw Virgil stand up and then slump back into his chair. When she realized he was dead, she ran to the wall-crank telephone to call the police. She rang twice before being shot in the face from the same window. She fell, but somehow got herself up after being shot in the face twice, which is incredible. I could never. And tried to go get a pistol from another room, but she was blinded by her own blood. She heard the killer at the back of the house and fled out the front door. She ran barefoot across the street to her sister and brother-in-law's house, but no one was home, so she ran over to her neighbor A.V. Pratter's house yelling, "Virgil's dead," and then collapsed. A.V. shot a rifle in the air to summon another neighbor, Elmer Taylor, who A.V. sent to collect his car. Elmer complied, and then he was able to take Katie to the hospital, where she was questioned in the operating room by Miller County Sheriff W.E. Davis, who became the head of the investigation. 4 days later, Sheriff Davis talked with Katie again, and she discounted a circulating rumor that Virgil had heard a car outside their home several nights in a row and feared being killed. The investigation of the attacks were well underway at this point and involved numerous law enforcement officers at the city, county, state, and federal levels. No suspects were apprehended. Over 200 people were questioned in the case, and about the same number of false leads were checked. 3 people found with bloody clothing were taken into custody, and all 3 were cleared of suspicion. Suspects were brought in from as far away as 100 miles, and throughout the investigations of the Phantom Killer case, almost 400 suspects were arrested. Police tried baiting the Phantom by recruiting teens to sit as decoys in parked cars while officers waited nearby, which would not fly today.
It wouldn't, but, like, as somebody who used to be a broke teenager, this would be the kind of bullshit where I'd, like, talk to you and I'd be like, oh my god, like, did you hear that the police station's, like, literally paying us to go sit in a car? Like, just, and wait for the killer? Like, do you want to go do that?
I'd be like, sure, I could use $20.
Literally, like...
And then we'd be murdered.
Literally, this is how it would happen. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. Like, you know,
we would be on the wrong street somehow, and the real killer would be like, "Oh, these fucking idiots are on the wrong street. The police are 3 blocks away."
Ha ha. Yeah, right.
Time to die.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Officers also volunteered as decoys with real partners or mannequins. I mean,
Okay.
I feel like the killer was pretty smart, so I don't know if you would be fooled by a cop in a car with a mannequin, but maybe.
See, that's the thing. Or, here's my other thought. What if the killer was a cop, and he's just, like, listening to his cop buddies be like, yeah, like, we're just gonna stick a mannequin in this car. The killer won't even see it coming, and he's just standing there, and he's like, y'all a bunch of fucking idiots.
That is actually a great theory, and I didn't even think about that. But he could have been a cop.
Right?
The unofficial theory for a motive amongst the majority of officers was that of sex mania, as large amounts of money in the same home were not taken, nor was Katie Stark's purse. By March 30th, police had posted a $500 reward in an effort to gain any new information on the case, but this produced over 100 false leads with no fruitful clues or suspects. And shortly after Katie Stark's home attack, the reward money had passed over $10,000, which in 1946 was a lot of money.
That's a good chunk of change.
Curfews were set for businesses in an attempt to keep people off the streets at night. It was additionally at this point that the hypothesized serial killer was dubbed the Phantom Killer by local media. Hysteria grew in the days following the murder of Virgil Starks in his home. There was constant media coverage of the increased police activity, and the Texarkana Gazette stated on May 5th that the killer might strike again at any moment, at any place, and at anyone. For a week, police were inundated with reports of prowlers. One officer stated that nearly all of the alarm was the result of excitement, wild imagination, and near hysteria. Previously, it had been normal for houses to be left unlocked. The murders alarmed residents into taking precautions with security, from locking doors to arming themselves with guns. Some people nailed sheets over their windows. Some nailed windows down and used the screen door braces as window guards. The day after Virgil Stark's death, stores sold out of locks, guns, ammunition, window shades, and ventilation blinds. So people were freaked the fuck out by this.
Which, like, yeah. I mean, I believe it.
And honestly, in researching this case, the local newspaper was literally fueling a lot of this. They were, like, running these radical ass, like, articles being like, the killer, he's coming for all of you. No one's safe.
See, this is one of those things, though, where, like, as, like, upsetting this situation is, obviously, I would be, for sure, one of the people who, like, if I worked at a newspaper and they were like, hey, we, like, gotta make this story, I'd be like, fuel the fire. Do it.
Well, you would fit right in at the Texarkana Gazette then. Because citizens were considerably nervous and armed with guns, Texarkana became a dangerous place. When calling on an address, law enforcement officers would turn on their sirens, stand in their headlights, and announce themselves to keep from being shot by a nervous homeowner. The fear was significant enough to spread to other cities, including Hope, Lufkin, Magnolia, and as far as Oklahoma City, where there were sales spikes for guns and axes. After 3 weeks without an associated murder, Texarkana's fear began to lessen. The concern lasted throughout the summer and subsided after 3 months had passed. There was some initial hesitation in linking the Starks murder to the other crimes because the weapon used was a .22 caliber gun, and Sheriff Davis believed it was an automatic rifle. By November 1948, authorities no longer considered the Starks murder connected to the 2 double murders and the first attack. In the end, 9 people confessed to being the Phantom, but their statements did not agree with the facts, so to this day, the Phantom Killer has still never been caught, at least not for these crimes.
I see. I stand by what I said earlier. I'm pretty sure this person had to have been a cop.
It It's weird that, like, people, like, even cops were being, like, looked at as, like, if they didn't announce who they were, people would have shot at them. That, like, strikes something in me as, like, was there a rumor going around that it was a cop?
That's the thing, too, right? Like, I think that, in these types of situations, even though, like, we're obviously outsiders looking at it from a distance, I think there's a lot to be said sometimes for the types of rumors that go around these towns, like when killings happen, because people know a lot more than what they let on to most of the time. And when something does happen, it's like what you said. Is there a reason why they're suspicious of the cops? Is there maybe a particular cop that has gotten drunk and done something stupid before that was dangerous, and now people are like, hey, like, let's keep an eye out on that guy, right?
Exactly. I never even thought about that, but I feel like that actually could make a lot of sense. Obviously, it's a wild theory. We have no proof to substantiate that, but I'm gonna, in my big brain, think that that's what happened.
I'm glad to hear we are on the same page. Oh boy. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of today's first Spooktober episode.
Ooh, yes.
If you like today's episode, or hang on, you were saying?
Before we move on to our end credits, we shall spin for, actually, no. Next week is Thanksgiving, so we're going to do a Thanksgiving episode.
Yes, but I can spin anyways, just for kicks.
Sure, spin the wheel. We're going to do Thanksgiving either way.
Oh my god, the wheel says we are doing Thanksgiving next weekend. How convenient.
Perfect. Well, take her away with our end credits, Em.
Awesome. So yes, if you like today's episode, you can always check us out on our website, which is The Wheel of Crime, or just wheelofcrime.com, www.wheelofcrime.com. That's the one. So you can check us out there, or if you like, you can leave us a review on wherever you're listening to your podcast today, which is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those guys, and leave us a 5-star review. It does help us with the trends and reaching out to more people, so that would be greatly appreciated. Besides that, we do have our social media as well, where you can find updates for the show, which is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Wheel of Crime. We also have our email, which is wheelofcrime@gmail.com. If you want to send in, say, your own story, or you want to contribute something, or like Jen had mentioned earlier this episode, we do also have a little document up there where you can upload any of your own stories if you want to be featured in our Halloween episode this year. Very exciting. And lastly, we have a Patreon, which is Wheel of Crime at Patreon, if you'd like to go on there and see what we could do for you if you want to donate a little something to the show and get something for your efforts. We got some cool stuff up there.
Yes, that's it. That's all. Please go share your stories on the Google forum. We really want to hear from you this year. We've never done listener stories before, and we're really excited. I did check. We already have a couple submissions. So, guys, definitely make sure to get in there and share your stories. And we will see you next week for our Thanksgiving episode. Bye!
Bye!